Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the first in this latest series of webinars, which we all hope you'll find very helpful and informative. Kicking this week off, we're very pleased to have Chris Mellowship from BenQ here to talk to you all today. BenQ have been a long-time supporter of EduGeek, and Chris is a Senior Technical Sales Manager at BenQ UK. Today, he's going to be covering energy-saving techniques and future developments in AV technologies. There will be a Q&A session at the end of Chris's talk, and if any of you want to ask a question, then please feel free to use the chat box to post them up, and we'll try and get through as many of them as we can. Welcome, Chris. It's great to have you here today, and thanks for taking the time out to speak to our members. And I know that the energy saving side of things is something that they're all quite keen on, because I'm pretty sure that almost everybody in EduGeek has walked to their school at one point in an out-of-hours area and seen that blue light of a projector going on.
Absolutely.
It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. It's and knowing you can't do anything about it until the morning. Okay, Chris, we'll hand it over to you here now, and I'll see you at the end when we do the quick Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris, for hosting me here. So as Chris said, I'm going to talk about the power saving and energy efficiency in AV products and advances in AV technology in the future. So the first thing I want to talk about is energy ratings. It's something that can cause a lot of confusion in the marketplace, and that's the fact that there are changes to them. We all know the old system of the G through to the A, and then the A plus and the A plus plus and the A plus plus. And the reason really for that, why the changes were there, everything was an A plus plus. I've got a TV at home from 2014 that still is rated as an A plus on the old scale. If you move it onto the new scale, it comes in a hefty G, and so it isn't particularly power saving and very efficient. And the people behind this thought, well, if everyone qualifies as an A plus plus, why are you going to spend R&D money and time and energy kind of researching and developing more efficient AV products? You're already at the highest point you can possibly be. And so they essentially shifted the goalposts. I think some manufacturers felt that was unfair, but realistically, it's the best way to kind of help us move forward and to make sure that our products are as efficient as they can be. And so the A to G scale is going to be there for all products. It's going to be for different appliances, and the old scale of the A triple plus, A plus are going to cease to exist. It takes into account the size of the appliance. So when you look at fridges, for example, a larger fridge that runs at an E may actually be more efficient than a smaller fridge that runs at a D, because it's cooling a large area of space, and overall that efficiency can add up. And then you've also got other things to take into account as the noise of the product. And so you'll start seeing the decibel levels of products being stored and noticed on the stickers. And then lastly, a lot of things, when they have an eco mode, they actually have to specify what is the energy consumption at the eco mode, because you can say that, oh yeah, you know, we're an A or something like that, you get through the rating, you're rated A, but you turn it on out the box and actually it's not in eco mode and it doesn't do all those bells and whistles at that point. And so you have to specify where you sit with your eco mode as well. And then it becomes easier to compare like for like. You can take a 65-inch and another 65-inch screen, and you'll be able to look at those labels, and it's going to be easier to compare each one, the eco mode of each one, how noisy each one is, and it just becomes a lot easier when you're trying to benchmark against other products. And I'd also say be wary of products that claim to be A triple plus. I know, you know, from my own experience of going out looking at monitors and TVs, there is still some old stock out in the marketplace, and you might see one of our screens somewhere, and the box will say it's an F or an E or something like that, and then you'll see this other brand, and that's going to be an A triple plus, and you think, well, that's clearly more efficient. Unfortunately, there is no like-for-like comparison to go A triple plus equals G. But rest assured, if you're looking at something that's A triple plus, it's not going to be A, B, or C on the new scale. So that is something to take in on board. I'm going to cover something on eco modes, and it is important to know that not all eco modes are created equal. There's a number of things that can wrap into that eco mode preset. You've got your power consumption. Obviously, you'd expect an eco mode to operate at a lower power efficiency, but what does that exactly entail? Is that going to be less powerful? Is that going to perform worse? We all want to be able to have a more efficient piece of equipment that we're using, but we don't want to sacrifice performance. And PCs are a great example of that. You have that little toolbar that you can slide back and forward on your battery marker on your laptop that goes super battery efficient, but basically we're going to turn off a couple of the cores and your graphics card's not going to be all that. Or you go super efficient, it's going to use more power, but you're going to get better usage out of the product. And so it is something to think about with the amount of power that it's consuming. Brightness is another huge thing. There's a number of studies that indicate that if you were to drop your brightness by 30%, you're actually going to reduce your power consumption by more than 30% over the lifetime of your product. And it becomes you get used to using that lower brightness. And in actual fact, using a high brightness level is never particularly good for us over a longer period of time. Standby mode, and this can be something as simple as when you put it to standby does it automatically go to standby? You have various things. My TV at home, I get that ominous, you've had the TV on for 5 hours, unless you press a button, I'm going to turn off warning message. But most panels now out of the box are going to have something like, if you don't touch the screen for 30 minutes, it's going to go to shutdown. You could change that to 10 minutes. In fact, studies from Cambridge University have shown that if you were set to your PC to go to sleep in 10 minutes instead of 30 minutes, over a year, you would have offset enough CO2 emissions for a flight from London to Paris. And that's crazy when you think about that. You're thinking about one monitor, and you can think about that from a PC and extrapolate that over large organizations, the amount of CO2 that gets wasted from things just being left on. Sleep mode as well. Now, standby mode is great. It's the lowest power saving that you can possibly get, but it does mean you're going to be waiting a couple of minutes to turn that device on when you want to use it. Sleep mode is that halfway house. It drops it into a really low power usage mode, but it's almost instant on when you go back to use it. And that itself can be something that's really useful, because if you're in the middle of a class or a meeting, screen goes blank, that's fine. But the next time you go to use it, you can't be sitting there waiting 5 minutes for that screen to then power back up. So, all those things can factor in. You're going to see various settings on different products. The screen behind me, for example, will have a separate setting for brightness, standby mode, and sleep mode. And so you can have it that if I don't use it for a couple of hours, it will shut down. But actually, if I don't touch it for 10 minutes, it will just turn the backlight off, which is going to drop the power consumption massively. Ambient light sensors. It's not unusual. Most of our phones have them. You'll notice that when you go somewhere, turn the lights off at night and you're on your phone, the brightness will drop on the screen. And that's because the screen, the sensor's going, well, it's not very bright in here. I don't need to offset the ambient light you're having to deal with. And likewise, in the room I'm in now, I'm quite well lit. And so the screen is probably upping that brightness to offset that. Sort of shutting down your device. So we all know that we can save money and energy and stuff like that by having the standby mode. But actually, in the real world, someone's got to go around and shut devices down. So local power management, that is basically you guys in the ICT suite that at the end of the day is going to have to go around to every room, every meeting room, every classroom, and physically shut the units down. That is the easiest way to do it. And we've all got a TV at home, and I would guess the majority of us, I know I'm guilty of this, do not turn the TV off at the plug overnight. My wife is forever giving out to me saying that, it'll save so much power and stuff like that. With the modern standby settings, unless you're using something that uses wake on LAN, you're using less than 0.1 watt in standby mode. The power saving in putting it into standby mode is almost inconsequential from being standby mode to being off. However, anything that uses wake on LAN is going to be using more power, and a lot of people think they've turned things off when they turn the backlight off, when they turn the monitor off, but the PC keeps running. In all those instances, realistically, you're going to have to go around and you're going to have to turn them off manually. What we have in a lot of our products now is cloud management, and that means that instead of having to get up and go to each room at the end of the day, I can very quickly log onto a site and shut the products down remotely. Now I can either do standby, which is going to be really low power usage, or I can do full shutdown, which shuts it down completely. It's the kind of thing that I would suggest is you think about end of the week, end of the term, break for Christmas or just breaking for the weekend is whether you want standby or shutdown, because shutdown is going to full shut down the unit. You won't be able to turn it back on remotely, but it is going to drop you right down to 0 power consumption. Monitoring your usage is something that we all think, but I definitely turn stuff off. But actually, with a lot of the cloud management facilities now, you're able to see how much power you're consuming on average. You can put power meters on plug sockets, and that will give you a real-time setting. But actually, then analyzing that data is quite difficult. With our cloud management platform, you're able to collate that data, and you can see, is there a particular room that's using more? Are we actually dropping down at the weekend? Is someone leaving stuff on over the weekend? So it kind of really helps you analyze the usage of the products. Firmware updates, it's something we don't always think about, but yes, it's great to be able to do firmware updates on a device, but firmware updates can bring power saving modes. You might find that you have different profiles then for picture brightness and things like that. You might have a super eco mode that gets released. And if you have to do it locally, that's typically either going to a device, if it is an internet enabled device, and downloading the firmware and installing it like that, or using a cloud management system. You can do all that remotely, and you can schedule it at the end of the day, so you're not impacting the usage of these rooms. Environmental monitoring. Some of our devices aren't just about having the brightness and the power usage and things like that, but you're actually going to find environmental sensors. Obviously, since COVID, the whole thing of having CO2 sensors and stuff in the classroom have been really, really big. One of my friends is a teacher, and he was just discussing it with me about saying, oh, we've got to get all these CO2 sensors in and everything like that. And I happened to know what they had in their school. And I did mention to him, you've got that built into our product that you've got in the classroom. And he didn't realize it. It's something that wasn't, widely known by a lot of the people in the site. And that's taken, further steps from that is not only just CO2, you're going to find that you've got other pollutant sensors in there, and that's going to really kind of give you a whole analysis to be able to analyze what is going on in the classroom. Do you need fresh air? Because, the more efficiently you use technology, probably you'll find the less you have to have it on. If something is on for all the time, also you're generating CO2, you're spending money on stuff like that. If people aren't paying attention because the CO2 is getting high in the room and stuff like that, then from that side of things, you're going to have to go over the same material again and again and again. And that really kind of can help how efficiently you use the products. So benefits of power saving. You've obviously got some obvious ones in here. One is time saving. So that is save you having to get up, go around, turn things on and turn things off, and do that every single day. But the big thing, a lot of people talk about CO2 output, carbon footprint, things like that. And the more efficient you use something, yes, you can get products. Our products are becoming more and more efficient. You've got those EPC ratings that are rating products and challenging them to push it closer and closer to that A level there to make them more efficient. But the stuff that you have on is generating CO2. And so if you can use those things efficiently, have them turned off at lunchtimes, turn off at the end of the day, not being on at weekends, and that will all contribute to a reduction of CO2 and a reduction of the carbon footprint. And it might sound really silly and easy to say, but there's monetary costs. There's two major things of monetary costs, and one of them you're probably already thinking of, and the other one is what I call my candle hypothesis, is that just because it's light outside, if your candle is still lit, it's going to burn down. And it's the same for AV products, the same for all technology. They have a finite lifespan. You can have a warranty for 3 years, 5 years, and if it goes in that period, that's great, you're covered under warranty. But at some point, a piece of technology will fail. And at that point, it will need to be replaced. Now, most technology is going to go when you first turn it on, or it will just go at the end of its lifespan. And what will tend to happen is if you've had your product on 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, it is more likely to go when the warranty is finished than if you're using it for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. We know sites that are still using screens from 8, 9 years ago. Now, from a manufacturer, obviously, we'd very much like them to be replaced with newer technology, but likewise, creating those new bits of equipment, manufacturing them, has a CO2 and power consumption thing you have to offset. So by using the products efficiently, by making sure you're not leaving them on when they don't need to be on, not only is that going to extend the life of the product, it means that you're not necessarily going to have to replace that product as soon as you maybe anticipated. And the other side of the monetary saving here is obviously going to be the actual cost of money it is to run them. So it's a little anecdote. Back in my previous role, some 7-8 years ago, they ran a big ideas initiative, cost saving or money making. And I went around the office about 8 p.m. on a Tuesday and worked out what had been left on: monitors, PCs, TVs, digital signage screens, all these kind of things, and what had been left on. Because my rationale was, if it's on at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, it's probably on every single day of the year. And as a conservative estimate, in 2014, this organisation, which only had about 120 people, it wasn't a giant multinational or anything like that, this organisation was wasting about £20,000 a year in electricity. And just you've got the CO2 that you're putting into the atmosphere that was unnecessary, and you've got the money that you were wasting by having that stuff turned on. Extrapolate that to 2023, electricity has more than doubled in cost. So you'll be looking at a site wasting £50,000, £60,000 a year. That's new teachers, new ICT suites, that's loads of stuff that you could use that money for, or even not have to make those cuts. You know, loads of people are under pressure to not that they're not allowed to spend the money, it's they don't have the money to spend. And so by reducing the monetary outlay that you have to spend on stuff being left on all the time, that will have a huge contribution to that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about advances in the technology that we use in the AV industry. And this is something that's been around for a little bit. You know, we've used it in our products for the last 5 years, but it's becoming more and more efficient, and that's low blue light. There are a number of studies that kind of show that low blue light levels can, over time, cause damage to the eye. In fact, one of the things that if you ever have to have eye surgery, you're told to avoid looking at TVs, to avoid being out in the sun, to avoid using your phone too much, and that's because the low blue light levels of those devices can damage a healing cornea at the back of your eye. And you know, we've all looked at screens. You know, I'm guilty of it as well. That I'll be on my phone, I'll get up in the middle of the night, put my phone on, I'm like, oh, my eyes, and it's just that impact of that light. And so you're finding low blue light now is you have toggle switches on devices that will turn them on, turn them off. You might see it on your phone as redshift mode, night mode, lots of different names for it, but they're all doing the same thing, reducing the low blue light. Some of our latest products don't have that toggle switch because it's permanently on, and we're resolving that at a hardware level rather than software. So we're not manipulating the image, we're stripping it out before it even gets to the screen. Flicker free, this is another thing that people don't necessarily realize, is there is a almost imperceivable flicker on most screens that we look at. And that's not necessarily down to the fact that it's 60 hertz, 90 hertz, 120 hertz. It's just slightly out of sync between the power going into the device and the refresh rate of the screen. And actually what we do with our products with flicker free is we synchronize those. So when you enable flicker free, when you enable what we call eye care, it will sync up that power frequency with the refresh rate of the screen. And so you don't get that flicker. Now, like I said, it's almost imperceivable. We don't tend to see it consciously, but subconsciously, our brain is filtering that out all the time. And that's why when you sit and look at your desktop for an hour and it's like, I've just been doing emails, why am I so tired? It's because your brain is having to do that filtering all the time. So with stuff like eye care, which takes into account your low blue light technology and your flicker free, it's going to make a better experience for the people using that technology, whether it's concentration levels, whether it's fatigue. Some people are more susceptible to it. Some people will develop headaches from prolonged use of these screens. So actually having the eye care technology reduces the impact on the users. Germ resistant. You know, a lot of people think germ resistant, it's a knee-jerk reaction to COVID and everything like that. We've started to have it in our products from about 2017. It used to just to be a spray coating that we would see, just being sprayed on in the factory as it was coming out. But now we're taking that one step further. We're heat bonding it to the glass. And that means that it's going to last as long as the glass does, and you've got your anti-glare coating on that as well. But then we kind of also realised that's great. You've got your germ-resistant coating on the screen. I don't use a pen. I use my finger. That's great. You're being protected. You're that germ-resistant coating. But for the people that use the pens, what is the point of the germ-resistant coating on that glass? Because you're not touching the glass. So now we use the same kind of technology on the glass on our accessories, such as the remote control and the pen. So actually, when you're passing that stylus round, you've got the same level of protection on your accessory as you do on the screen. And we're the only hardware manufacturer in the world to be certified safe and non-toxic. We use a similar kind of technology that's in antibacterial hand soap. So little silver ion particles that prevent the bacterial reproduction. And that basically means my hand has bacteria, I touch the screen, where I touch the screen has the bacteria. Those little silver ion particles prevent that from reproducing. So the germ-resistant coating will reduce the bacterial reproduction by up to 90% over a 24-hour period on the screen and on the accessories. Environmental sensors. So I touched on this briefly earlier on by saying some of our devices will have CO2 sensors and things like that, but we're seeing that kind of evolve far more than that. So not only can you look for things like CO2 sensors, but particulate matter sensors. It isn't just a case of, oh, it's got a high level of CO2 in here, but what's the air quality like? We can open a window to resolve a CO2 issue. If the particulate matter is really high, that doesn't get resolved by opening a window, because all you're going to do is let more pollution back in the room. So different levels of particulate matter sensor, 2.5, 10 microns. So you've got all those kind of different sensors in there. And things like TVOC, which is another kind of pollutant. But then what you're starting to see is, what do you do with that information? So yes, you could report it. You could go to your manager and say there's high levels of pollutant. But what can you do? Well, what you're starting to see, and you're starting to see in the latest products that we've brought out, is air purifying technology. So we have air ionizers that are built into our screens now that will help purify the air kind of like 1.5 meters in front of the screen. And as air naturally circulates in an environment, you're helping to clean all that air in that room. So you're helping not only being able to say the CO2 is getting a bit high, the pollutants are getting a bit high in here, but we're going to help clear that area as well, which will then in turn make it a healthier, more enjoyable experience. Dolby Digital Plus, it's something that, back in my previous role, I helped develop an audio brand within distribution, and it's something that people rarely think of. It's half the name. We're literally audio-visual products. We're audio-visual manufacturers. Half of it is audio. People get so het up about making sure you've got the right visual qualities, 4Ks, HDR, refresh rate, and people often don't stop to think about the audio quality. I know I give out to my wife all the time is that I'm saying, well, I'd like it to be the corner mounted or wall mounted, because the soundbar that I bought, I'm not hearing it from sitting at the angle on there. And that, not being able to hear something properly might seem insignificant, but in the real world, if you're doing a lot of spoken stuff through the screen, so you're getting a lot of speech on the speakers, if you're at an angle, the way that the sound reverberates around the room, it can be hard to understand that. I mean, I say all of us, I'm certainly old enough to remember when the teacher used to wheel in the old CRT TV at the front of the class, and if you were sitting in the wrong place in the room, you didn't hear anything, because you had side or rear mounted speakers that would bounce around. Someone left the door open, half the audio goes out the room. So taking into account the audio side of technology is really, really important. And that's why all of our touchscreens have not just front facing speakers, but some of them have soundbars now. So actual echo chambers to amplify and kind of direct the audio at the audience. In our latest range, we're also Dolby Digital Plus certified, so you can actually tweak the equalizer for certified speech levels or movie or music, and so you get the right audio reproduction from your product, because it isn't just about what it looks like, it is also about what it sounds like. And lastly is EDLA. Now, some of you may have seen some of this. If any of you have bet earlier on in the year, you may have seen this dotted around the place, and you're starting to see more and more information come out about it. But what is EDLA? Well, for years, all the manufacturers have had their own operating system. And what you're going to start to see is a Google certified Android operating system. So what does that mean? So the Play Store, native applications. If you want the Google apps, you'll get the Google apps. If you want Chrome, you'll have Chrome. If you want Office 365, Teams, Zoom, Meet, they're all going to be available because they're in the Play Store. But this in turn opens up another kind of Pandora's boxes. I don't want people in the room to be installing those things. And so you'll start to be able to use those devices within an admin console. So you can restrict certain categories of applications. You'll be able to preload certain applications. And it also means, because you're using native apps, if you sign into a product, you're going to be signing into those native apps as well. So it's going to be a big step forward. It's going to be a challenge, I think, for a lot of people, because I know, for years I've worked with teachers, I've worked with people in businesses that talk about, we want to be able to install the Play Store and we want these apps, and that's great. In principle, not a problem. What do you do, or how do you restrict someone coming into a room and installing something on a screen that they shouldn't be installing? And that's always been the challenge. That's why manufacturers essentially have always had a lockdown OS, that it isn't easy to sideload apps. Some apps won't work because they need Google Play services, and you're going to start to see that question answered. It is going to provide another challenge, but we're confident that we're going to be able to tie that into our account system, so it isn't going to be completely unfettered access. You are going to have the Google admin console that, if you do have Chromebooks and things like that on site now, you're going to be familiar with. For those that don't have that, it is going to be a kind of a learning curve, but you're going to have that new functionality. We're not just going to be having it built into new products moving forward. We are also going to have it available as a slot-in unit. And the reason for that is we want people to be using the same platform. It's going to be very hard for someone who bought a screen this year, last year, and then they go, well, I want that new one. When can I get that upgrade? And you're not going to be able to. It kind of locks to the version that you buy. But with that slot-in, for a relatively inexpensive cost, you're going to be able to get the OS that you can see behind me here, that's going to give you all that native system where you can have accounts, you can have PIN number locks and things like that, as well as having Google Play Store access. That's really the last thing from me. I hope you found that useful. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to fire away.
Hi, Chris. Thanks a lot for that talk. It was very informative. I know I got a lot out of it, especially dispelling the myth about turning things off at the plug. It's always been one of those things. I mean, for a lot of us like myself, if you've got an Xbox or whatever console as well, it's a case of, well, how much power? And Microsoft did a thing the other year where they dispelled the myth about how much power it does use when it's been put on standby, because they've got a really good power efficiency mode now. So we'll move into the questions now, and we've got a couple from Dave Stevens, and he's asking about when you mentioned what is the cloud management control panel feature called, and is there a cost?
Okay, so from us at BenQ, it's called DMS, or DMS Cloud, and there is no cost. In fact, with any of the cloud services with our interactive flat panels, there is no cost. The only subscription model that we have is for our digital signage platform, and that's all about cloud management and cloud storage and things like that. But for DMS, which is our device management software, for AMS, which is our account management system, and Broadcast, which is our messaging system that you can send text, image, video, YouTube, PDFs to a screen, there is no additional cost. The devices need to be connected to the internet, which you can either do by using the LAN port, which almost all of our devices have, or you can purchase an optional wireless dongle, and that will then give you wireless connectivity for your device as well. But there is no subscription cost for our interactive panel touchscreen cloud services.
Okay, thank you. And I have one as well. It's not quite, well, it is related to this as regards to power saving. Are there any stats as to the reduction of lifespan of devices which are left on overnight? I'm not talking projector bulbs, but obviously if monitors have been left on or whatever, does that impact the device's lifespan? let's just take a monitor, for example. Say the monitor doesn't have any power saving options on.
So yeah, you can, if you don't have any power savings, things like that, it is going to impact the lifespan of a product. I mean, take any kind of visual product, whether it's a monitor, a touch screen, a television. It's something that a lot of people will see in a spec sheet, and they'll see 20,000 hours, 30,000 hours, and that's the expected lifespan of the backlight to the screen, whether it's edge lit or backlit LED. They will have a finite life. If they're being left on all the time, you're using those hours. You know, if you use if I leave the screen on overnight, it doesn't stop eating into that lifespan of the product. Now, granted, I'm not turning it off and on, off and on, off and on, which can often do more damage than just leaving something on all the time. I don't know if there's any specific studies to how much it impacts it, but you know, I've seen for myself where I hear from schools that say, oh, you know, the screens that have all failed are ones that never get turned off. And you know, I don't think that's a coincidence that you see that replicated out in the world on pretty much anything, laptops, PCs. You know, I'm guilty of leaving, you know, a PC on doing some video conversion or downloading some files from OneDrive or something overnight, and you know, it will eat into the hard drive life or something. And you know, it's not just about your backlight of your product, but whether it's a physical hard drive or an SSD, again, expected lifespan of these products, they are not infinite. They're much better than they used to be. I know SSDs were quite renowned for relatively high failure rates within a certain period of time, because you could only access the data so many times before it got corrupted, and that's becoming less and less frequent. But you know, everything we use has a finite life, and so by making sure that we use them as efficiently as possible, and like I said, people want to save the money. They want to save, you know, the cost of replacing a product. But, you know, I don't want to reduce the power. I don't want to reduce the performance. And, you know, you touched on it earlier on about an Xbox, and they've recently had new power saving stuff rolled out that it will update stuff overnight. It, you know, checks it at a certain point. So I don't need to leave it on. I can put it into low power saving mode, but it's going to go check it at 1 a.m. in the morning for updates, download it if needed, and then shut it down afterwards. And so technology and the people behind it are getting cleverer and more efficient with dealing with these things. But yeah, everything has a finite lifespan, and you know, I think it's part of the challenge of managing these products is to what you can do with that lifespan.
Yeah, excellent. I think Dave's got one. It's kind of a last question. His post up is, what sort of ballpark price is the slot-in, for example? Do you have any costings for that?
I knew I was going to be asked that question. I've been pestering my product manager all morning. Unfortunately, they haven't yet given me one. What I can do, Chris, is once I do have that, I know what I was given a bet as a ballpark price, but that was 6 months ago, and you know, number shift. So what I'll do, Chris, is once I've got that, I can send that out to you, and then you can inform anyone that's asked you that question.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, Chris, thank you very much for joining us today. That's been wonderful. It really has. And I'd like to thank everybody else for attending. And that about wraps it up for today.